Welcome to the inaugural edition of Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. Thanks for tuning in. Got a big show lined up for you as we plan each week we will. We're going to start this first segment. I'm going to do a quick show open here, but then also have Joe Mershman, the man behind the plan here with Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. And it's going to be Joe Mershman and with Mershman Seeds, and we're going to have Joe as the president and CEO of Mershman. So we're going to talk for briefly a few moments with Joe. And then we're going to have David Eichel join us, a Hawkeye reporter, and he is HawkeyeInsider.com. And then we'll have former Hawkeye quarterback James Vandenberg, and then we'll close out the show with Jeff Horner, former Hawkeye great basketball player. So got a full and rich show lined up for you, as we will each week, each Friday night right here at 10 p.m. on Fox 28. So I wanted to let you know as well a little bit about me if you don't know who I am, or I'm a Northeast Iowa native, part of DaveO'HaraSports.com or via Twitter at Dave O'Hara Sports, covering all things in the sports world, but primarily, and for this show only, the Iowa Hawkeyes. So we're looking forward to bringing you the best coverage from former coaches, players, current coaches, players, also with media involved with the Iowa Hawkeyes. So we love bringing it all to you, the Hawkeye coverage. Probably not the best of circumstances right now with the Hawkeyes being 0-2, but we're ready to plow right through it. We've got a basketball season upcoming that everybody's got a lot of expectation and very excited. We also, with football, let's not remember, a season was not made in 2 weeks. So Hawks are going to rally back. I can feel it and I know it against an in-state quarterback, Rocky Lombardi from Michigan State, who played his high school football in Des Moines, and he'll be coming back to his home state of Iowa to play. So I am glad to be back in my home state of Iowa. My bio again is on my website, DaveO'HaraSports.com, or it's linked via my Twitter at Dave O'Hara Sports. So I'm back in Iowa, my native Northeast Iowa. I lived in California for a number of years and worked at NBC Studios, as well as hosted a show in Kansas City for Fox Sports Radio. Great to be back in Iowa and bringing you Iowa Hawkeye coverage, the best of the best coverage we can possibly bring you. Thanks again for tuning in, and now we go to my good friend Joe Mershman. Joe, thanks for joining us and making this possible. So a lot of viewers, I'm sure, are wondering, why Joe Mershman, why Mershman Seeds, why a sports show? And you do a great deal of work with the University of Iowa Athletics, the Children's Hospital. So, Joe, I'll ask you that question. Why? Thanks very much, obviously, for your sponsorship and friendship. But most importantly, why do you get involved in these types of shows?
It's real simple. I'm an avid Hawkeye fan, and I heard Chad Greenway speak one time, and he talked about how the culture at University of Iowa for all the athletes is, they're developing good men and women, and that's their ultimate goal. Yes, some of them go on to the pros, but most of them go into the real world and fight it out there. So I'm real proud of the Hawkeyes and what they represent.
Let's do this, Joe. 0-2 start. What a week to have our first show, but, we're plowing through. We're excited about basketball. We're going to plow through this. The Hawks are going to turn it around this week against Michigan State. Give us your early takeaway in 30 seconds or so on the Hawkeyes this season.
Well, as you know, winning is easy. Losing is hard. Right now, the Hawkeyes are getting tougher and better. And you know what? There's going to be something good come from this. All the things that are going on right now, something good's going to come from it. And I think the Hawkeyes are going to bounce back and they're going to do well.
Joe, I couldn't agree more with you. Thank you so much. I look forward to catching up with you next week for our Mershman Minute. And thank you again. And we're going to join David Eichel right now. He's with HawkeyeInsider.com. So David Eichel, Hawkeye Insider, joins us. And David, got to ask you this directly. You've got a lot of points that you've written about in these last couple of weeks with the Hawkeyes. Unfortunately, 0-2. You were at the Kirk Ferentz press conference earlier today. Just full disclosure to your listeners, we record this TV show every Tuesday. We waited until after the Kirk Ferentz press conference. David, thanks for joining us, and let's get right to it. Some of the writings that you have that you've written over this last weekend and early this week, you've talked about why I was 0-2 and how you would fix that. But let's get to Kirk Ferentz's comments first, please.
Yeah, so Kirk Ferentz, I guess the basic takeaways, Dave, is they're obviously very disappointed in what's gone the last couple of weeks. They like the way the team has responded so far, but keep in mind, Dave, usually they do a lot of their heavier lifting on Tuesday and Wednesday, but with the election day and with the NCAA giving student athletes the day off, Kirk Ferentz is just sort of sliding that schedule forward, and I don't think they're going to be going as heavy this week because obviously come Thursday, Friday, they really want to tone things down, get in the schematics, and basically protect each other, again, from, the coronavirus. We've already seen 2 Wisconsin games get canceled this season, and I know Kirk Ferentz and them are taking it very, very seriously so they can actually have a full season.
You know, when we've got to go here, and we to this point, and I'm going to talk to James Vandenberg about this from a former player's perspective. We got to talk about it. Ihmir Smith-Marsette. I'm going to step aside and let you set the framing, what Coach Ferentz said about it, and where we go from here. We obviously know he's suspended so far for the Michigan State game, but what else can you give us on that?
Yeah, so we did ask Kirk to clarify some of those comments and what that sort of timeline was. Right now, Ihmir Smith-Marsette is working on the scout team this week. He's only expected to miss this Saturday's game. They anticipate him being back in the mix next week, but he still has to go through the athletic department protocols. And with that being said, Dave, a couple of people that are going to step up. Charlie Jones, the punt returner, who I think has done a very nice job this season. He's going to be taking kick returns alongside Avery Kelly Martin back there. And as far as the wide receiver reps go, I would look for an uptick in snap counts for Tyrone Tracy Jr. And he did mention Charlie Jones as well, so we might be able to see him on the offensive side. Tyrone Tracy has already called Charlie Jones a real talent, said he's made a lot of big-time plays in practice, but he said it obviously doesn't matter if it doesn't translate to Saturday. So I'm very interested in what Charlie Jones can bring to the table. He was a very good standout in Buffalo, a very good walk-on get for the team last year. But, again, his teammates have raved about him, and I think he's done a nice job so far.
All right, so let's get to Coach Ferentz, Kirk Ferentz's comments. Then just protocol, procedure, did he give much more information about words that he had with Ihmir Smith-Marsette or what the coaching staff did, or where else do we go from there? What else did Coach Ferentz say about that today?
Yeah, I mean, Kirk basically just said he was very disappointed and very surprised at Smith-Marsette's actions, but he did say he was incredibly remorseful. He could just tell by the pain in his eyes, you know, he knew he messed up. And he didn't shy away from that. He basically took it on the chin. Kirk got a chance to talk with him. Again, he was very remorseful about it. And again, as far as the timeline goes, he'll be out versus Michigan State. And I'd be surprised if he missed much more time. Again, I mean, you're talking about a guy. And again, this is typical Iowa pro call. I mean, Dave, you think about, you remember Tristan Wirfs got an OWI. I believe it was last year. He missed the season opener and came right back. And I expect, again, despite going, you know, I know there's some extra things involved with this one, the 74 miles per hour and a 30 mile per hour zone. This is standard code of conduct stuff for student athletes and students all across the university.
Well, let's do this. Let's get to your points then, and thank you for the extra information on Ihmir Smith-Marsette from Coach Kirk Ferentz, today's comments. Let's talk about what your thoughts are for moving forward now into the Michigan State game. Homegrown talent and Iowa talent from the Des Moines area. Rocky Lombardi, the quarterback for Michigan State, coming back in-state to play against his growing up his in-state team at Kinnick Stadium. Let's talk about Michigan State and some of the keys you've written about. Where are we going from here, David?
Yeah, I know. I think first things first, Dave, I need to apologize to Michigan State because I claimed that they would be the new Rutgers of this year, and then they came out and Mel Tucker's squad came out and really competed well and obviously beat Michigan. So this is not a team to be overlooked. Rocky Lombardi was tremendous in that game. And keep in mind, this is a homecoming for him. And he said since he committed to Michigan State, his junior of high school, he's had this game circled in his calendar. I mean, granted, they've had the schedule changes, but you know his point. So, I mean, this could be a homecoming for him. He said his family doesn't really ever get to watch him play. So this is one of their few times that they've actually been able to see him play live. So he's going to come in with a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. And I think, number one, David, key to victory for Iowa, run the football. Take pressure off of Spencer Petras. 51 passes is far too many when you have Tyler Goodson, Mekhi Sargent, and I'll even throw in Avery Kelly Martin, who I think has done a nice job so far this season, giving the team a little spark in the backfield. 23 runs, especially in the wind conditions last week, it's unacceptable. And Kirk Ferentz said himself, that's not something they want to strive for. So run the football and pressure Rocky Lombardi. I think that defense really showed a lot in that second half against Northwestern.
Very big keys for the Hawkeyes to do this. And, David, I never thought we'd be sitting here talking with this first show that the Hawkeyes would be 0-2, but that's where we are. He is Hawkeye Insider David Eicholt. And, David, I got to tell you, we're excited about basketball. So we thought just to kind of cover ourselves, we talked to Jeff Horner, former Hawkeye great, at the end of the show in the last segment about Hawkeye basketball. So you've been covering that well, too. Big games upcoming against Gonzaga, North Carolina. In about 20 seconds, give us your takeaways on basketball upcoming as well, please.
Yeah, Fran McCaffrey said it's going to be the toughest schedule his team's ever faced. And keep in mind, this is as of today. John Rothstein, CBS Sports, did say and talked with Fran McCaffrey, said that there will be an Iowa State game this year in Carver Hawkeye Arena. So in-state fans, get excited for that.
Fantastic stuff as always. David, thanks so much.
Hey, appreciate it, Dave. Take care.
Thank you. You bet. Back with more Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara, in just a few moments.
One word means more to farmers than any other: yield. Nobody knows this better than your friend in the field, Merschman Seeds. With industry-leading seed treatments like Tripidity ST, you'll see faster emergence and more bushels per acre. Become a part of the Merschman family and see the difference in your field. Ask your dealer for superiority. Merschman Seeds.
Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara, and thanks for tuning in. And this guy will be joining us every week, the guy you see on your screen along with me, James Vandenberg, former Hawkeye great quarterback. And James was there from 2008 to 12, and then he was a free agent signee with the Minnesota Vikings in 2013. And James still holds records for the state of Iowa high school football, where he and his Keokuk Chiefs won the 2007 state title. And James now with RBC Wealth Management, and again, that's part of the Corridor Investment Group with another former Hawkeye great and Bill Happel Jr. So we got the quarterback here with James Vandenberg, but also his business partner, Bill Happel Jr. So, as always, James, thanks for joining us. And secondly, give us some of your takeaways and thoughts in reference to Spencer Petras, the Iowa Hawkeye offense. A little concerned now, 0-2, and we broke down the stats in the previous segment. Let's get your take as a former Hawkeye quarterback, please.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dave. I think there's a lot of moving pieces with any offense, but you got a new quarterback making his first couple starts. Clearly, we're not just connecting on all cylinders right now. And the quarterback obviously is going to take a lot of that blame, but there's 10 other guys out there that are facilitating that as well. So I think we're just in the process of kind of finding our identity, which I don't think has probably totally been determined yet. There's going to be kinks. We've got a young first-time starting quarterback that doesn't get to play any cupcake games and goes straight into the Big Ten, with the second week being Northwestern, who notoriously is tough for us. So I think some bumps should have been expected. Nobody likes them. We can all complain about them now. But going forward, we want to see progression, and we want to see them kind of just find a rhythm, which I think we will.
You know, there's a couple of intriguing points that you made that I really want to highlight on when you talked about he didn't get a lead-in game as you did, not the Miami of Ohio's back in the day or the directional schools that Iowa does play in some of the non-cons. Heck, even an Iowa State game for that matter. It's all, Big Ten, and he started on the road at Purdue. Granted, there's no crowd there, but still the point of that is he is starting with Big Ten games. But now this is the second game in a row, James. You and I talked about this on my radio show, but now we'll bring it on the TV side here. A lot has been made from other commentators about a hot football or a fast football that Spencer Petras throws. So my comment to you on this would be, we talked a little bit about on radio, and now it's morphed into game two. What are your thoughts on that? And you talked about windows that close quickly when you're playing big-time football, but we need to address this again with Spencer Petras, do we not?
Yeah, no, I know what they're referring to. There's a couple different kinds of hot footballs. One of them can hit a guy right in the belly button and you have no problems with it. But when you throw a hot football that's high, which he did several times, they get batted in the air. Nothing good happens when that happens over the middle. That can be fixed. That's not as big of a deal. I mean, if he drills those guys between the numbers, I don't think the footballs were thrown so hard that they were uncatchable. What I think is you miss off target with a more firm throw, and all of a sudden the guy only gets a hand on it, it goes flying and gets picked off, and everybody wants to say, oh man, he's throwing it too hard. I think those were misses, and whether that's a miscommunication on the route or the throw, I don't know. I don't know exactly the scenario there. I know you got to be careful when you throw the ball over the middle, because anything that goes in the air is most likely going to the defense.
Yeah, and that was key play with Sam Laporta, and he made him go high and stretch out for it off his hands, and very reliable receiver. But in Sam Laporta's defense, as you mentioned, when it's a hot football coming in like that, bad things happen where it gets tipped and goes up in the air and then it's picked off, especially in a key part of the game, and it's bad whenever it happens, but as you mentioned, in a key part. So let's do this. Unfortunately, we've got to talk about an off-field incident with Ihmir Smith-Marsette. Everybody knows he's been suspended for this Michigan State game upcoming. Excuse me, an after-hours event where he was arrested and pulled over for driving while intoxicated, still pending. But I wanted to ask you from a player's perspective. You were there. You're the team leader. You're the quarterback. This guy, Ihmir Smith-Marsette, is on the offensive side of the football, and even if he was a defensive player, how was that handled in your playing days, not just with the coaching staff, but did players get together? Did team leaders like yourself? How would this be handled back in your day when that happened?
Yeah, offense, defense really is irrelevant when it comes to these types of scenarios. obviously from the coach's standpoint, there needs to be punishment. This stuff cannot be tolerated. It shouldn't be happening ever, but definitely not during the season. And so it's one of those things where the punishment is coming from an internal standpoint, from the player standpoint. You got to have leaders rise up. And yeah, you'd like to say quarterbacks, but quarterback's one leader on the team. And this is a sophomore quarterback, which is a great leader, but you need the older guys that have been there 4 or 5 years to collectively get together and pull it together, which they've clearly done over the summer with some of the adversity. They'll do it again here. It takes more than one person's voice to kind of bring it all back together. So the group of older guys is the ones that are going to have to step in here and make sure that everybody's kind of toeing the line.
Yeah, when you take a look at this, and now it will transition to another quarterback, Michigan State's Rocky Lombardi is an Iowa kid. He's leading Michigan State in, and what a turnaround they had from week to week. Week 1 against Rutgers, they lose to lowly Rutgers, and they have 7 turnovers. All of a sudden, they come back, and they're a 24-point underdog to Michigan, and they come back and they beat their in-state rival. So Rocky Lombardi was talking on a national sports talk interview I heard the other day about, he's excited to come home and play his in-state rival. But you talk about a progression here for Michigan State on the rise and Iowa after 0-2 being on the down. I'm really curious if you were, didn't play for the Hawkeyes and you came in from a Big Ten school, from a visiting, do you got to keep your emotions in check? And he said, I'm a pretty, emotional guy, but he said, no, I'll have everything reined in. I think that's easier said than done, wouldn't it be?
Yeah, there's going to be emotions on and on both sides. I wouldn't want to go play an 0-2 Iowa team. I would not really want to do that. It's going to be a good game. I don't know if you can take anything into trending either way.
Right.
We've lost 2 games, both close games where we clearly made some mistakes. They obviously lost the game where they made a lot of mistakes, and then won a heated rivalry game, which is arguably a toss-up. So I don't know if we can read into the trends. I expect us to be very focused, and obviously we don't get the Kinnick crowd effect, but I expect this to be a really hard-fought football game on Saturday.
Yeah, I do too. I think, as you mentioned, coming into Kinnick Stadium, Michigan State, that's going to be all they can handle, let alone the emotions. And Lombardi talked about his family being there, and that's what's allowed in the games. But I'll tell you this, like you said, Iowa is wounded coming in. I think they're going to be ready for action. And hopefully when we talk to you next week, we're talking about a Hawkeye victory after these last 2 weeks, James, of Hawkeye losses. So let's do this. Let's kind of plan on that if that works for you. Can we? What'd you say to me off the air? You said, Dave, it would just be someone.
Yeah. Let's plan on that. Let's just schedule it for next week. We're talking about a win here.
Yeah, you're talking to me. You said, David, it'd be so much easier if you could just get the Hawkeyes to win. I'll do what I can, James, as long as you do as well. So we'll hopefully look forward to talking about a Hawkeye win. James, thank you so much. We'll catch up with you next week, my friend.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. For James Vandenberg, this is Dave O'Hara, Hawkeyed with me, Dave O'Hara. And James, again, former Hawkeye great quarterback, part of that Corridor Investment Group, part of RBC Wealth Management, with Bill Happel Jr., former Hawkeye great receiver. So we've got the quarterback and the receiver at RBC Wealth Management or CorridorinvestmentGroup.com. Check James's workout post his playing career. So James, thanks again to him, and we'll be back with more Hawkeyed with me, Dave O'Hara, to close out the show with Jeff Horner, former Hawkeye basketball great. Yes, there is basketball season soon upcoming. So we'll look forward to talking to Jeff. Back with more in just a few moments.
His hands were hard and stained with dirt from breaking ground. If a ship ever comes in, it's coming in and rolls. He'll make it roll. They'll make it
Welcome back to Hawkeyed with me, Dave O'Hara, and pleased to have this guy join us as he joins me on the radio side, has joined me for years. He's Jeff Horner, former Hawkeye great basketball player, basically your career leader and season leader in all meaningful statistical offensive categories. And Jeff now in year 3 at Truman State, head basketball coach there for the men. And Jeff played overseas for a number of years when he and I first connected, and he was playing overseas pro ball, as was Adam Haluska and Jeff Horner, and besides Jeff Horner, Greg Bruner. And so that trio of Hawkeye greats. So as always, Jeff, great catching up with you, and thanks for doing this. And we're going to have you on throughout the basketball season to talk a little Truman Bulldogs basketball, but primarily talk some Hawkeye basketball, obviously. So thanks for joining us, Jeff.
Thanks for having me.
How's everything going with you? I want you to tell the story just a little bit for those that don't know, but on Jeff's social media and all online. I want to update a health update for you, Jeff. You're a cancer survivor, but if you could in the next minute or two, kind of get everybody up to speed. You're tested regularly. You look great. Everything is going healthy. You're ready to go into the season. Unfortunately, because of the coronavirus, your rug was pulled out, you and your team. You were on your way to Nationals for Division II. That didn't happen, but then you had another battle before the season off the court with cancer, and also now throughout the summer and into this fall. Let everybody know, if you would, how that went and how you're doing now, please.
Yeah, it was, obviously I got diagnosed with testicular cancer, and I think it was right around August last year. And so kind of going through camps and all that kind of stuff. And unfortunately I had to miss, a lot of the preseason stuff with our team, going through chemo treatment, that type of thing. And so that was pretty rough, but in the end, it's definitely made me a stronger person, and missed the first couple of games of the year. And then after that, didn't really miss a beat after that. Just trying to just keep the energy and keep the focus of our team. And, I think that kind of helped us out, just because, a lot of our talks were a lot of things are more important than basketball, that type of thing. So our team had a great season and was really excited about it. And since our season ended, have had about 3 or 4 clean scans since then. So it hasn't come back, and hopefully it stays away, and can't wait for that. So it's been a rough ride. It's been an interesting year. And, everyone kind of talks about 2020 being a tough year. So it's no different for me, for sure.
Yeah, and oh, by the way, you've got 2 young kids at home, a daughter and a son, and the kids that you're coaching. So yeah, you're definitely moving onward and upward, and congratulations on the victory, the biggest victory of all, and congratulations on that. But I got to talk to you about expectations, and you were part of that team. You're a former, back then it was called the MOP, Most Outstanding Player of the Big Ten Tournament, but the MVP of that magic run you guys had in the 05-06 season. And I want you to talk a little bit about this year. Obviously, the Hawkeyes have scheduled some huge opponents from national prominence. One of the top handful ranked teams in Gonzaga, as Iowa's a top 5 team in some preseason polls. Now a North Carolina game has been added for a non-conference game. Besides that rugged Big Ten conference, well, Jeff, you know better than anybody about Hawkeye fans. You came into a Hawkeye career as the former Mr. Iowa basketball, playing in the Mason City area, and you come into Iowa. High expectations. If we put you back 15, 20 years later, you're incoming freshman at Iowa, or you're a returning senior, how do you handle this expectation? Because you know what it's like firsthand with Hawkeye fans.
Yeah, I would say that, we didn't have, I don't think we probably had as high as expectations going into the 2006 season, as they do now. I think we were kind of a little bit relatively unknown. Obviously we had lost our best player in Peter Pierce the year before. So, it kind of took a hit, took us a while to be able to play together, that type of thing. And obviously we knew we had an experienced group coming back. And so our senior year, it was kind of like we kind of snuck up on some people a little bit, and then obviously finished second. So we didn't have to deal with those expectations. But in saying that, this is and we're going through it with our team here at Truman State too as well. All it takes is probably one COVID test to shut you down, and not a lot of people probably think about that. Obviously, Wisconsin's going through that in football right now, but, I'm not wishing that on anybody, but, you have to stay healthy. You have to, make sure that you stay away from those types of things. And, hopefully those guys are doing a good job of trying to stay away from outside stuff, because obviously they're being tested probably more than anyone else on campus too, as well, according to the NCAA. So, I think they've got the guys to be able to do that. They got strong-minded guys with a lot of confidence, and, they definitely have the team to do that. And hopefully they can come out night in, night out and compete and just stay healthy.
Jeff, when you mentioned that about talking with expectation and dealing with that and being a top-ranked team, and obviously much was made in the offseason about Luka Garza coming back, and that's, fantastic news. But now, and you're going to be dealing with this too. All this season, doesn't really count for their eligibility. Jack Nunge is a 5th-year sophomore. He could be a 7th-year senior. And, I don't want to start this talk again, but Luka Garza could have that decision coming up again about coming back next year. So I'm going to ask you from a coaching standpoint, budgetary-wise, a lot of other reasons. There's some things that are really at play here, Jeff, that it's not just about a guy coming back or not. There are a lot of other careers and futures on the line here with incoming freshmen, returning 5-year, 6-year seniors. You mentioned coronavirus, but what an interesting time this is on a lot of levels.
Yeah, it definitely affects, a lot of things for sure. At the Division I level, what the NCAA doesn't like to tell you is that, they basically are not, they're not giving Division I's 15 scholarships for next year. They still have 13 scholarships. So they're not giving Division II each school $50,000 more to use towards scholarships, So they don't tell you that. They come out looking like the good guy, that type of thing. And so it's, it definitely puts a lot of pressure on each and every school. It puts a lot of pressure on the coaching staffs of how many guys can you recruit? Do you think someone's going to leave? We're in an era now where it seems like we have to recruit our own players at our own school because everyone thinks that, the pasture is greener on the other side. So it's definitely interesting and definitely a tough spot to be in, but everybody's in the same situation too, I guess you can say. And, basically it kind of stinks too a little bit because if you're waiting till the spring to get your recruiting done and, I don't want to say lazy, but, I'm one of those guys that likes to get their recruiting done in the fall and get that established. So, that's definitely tougher for the guys who want to do that and get that done in the fall time than it is for the spring for sure.
Jeff, well stated as always, and our time goes so quick with you. I can't wait to catch up with you next week. We're going to get more into expectations of, legitimately, not from a fan perspective, but from a matchup standpoint, and talk a little bit more about your experience at Truman last year and how you're looking this year when we get some more time. We definitely look forward to catching up with you next week and really appreciate you joining us this week. Great to see you in person. I know we talk on the radio. You're on my show quite regularly, but now it's good to catch up with you kind of in person via Zoom. So thanks so much, Jeff. Look forward to talking to you next week.
Thanks for having me, Dave.
You're very welcome. For Jeff Horner, this is Dave O'Hara at Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara, and Jeff will join us each week. Again, Jeff is in his third year as Truman State's head basketball coach. We look forward to catching up with Jeff. Jeff, of course, former Hawkeye great, and we're always going to catch up with Jeff's recollections of his teams, but also moving forward. That's it for our first episode of Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. Thanks for tuning in. Look forward to having you tune in next week as well. I want to thank Joe Mershman, my buddy at Mershman Seeds, for bringing you this program, but also to my friend Sean Holly at Holly Shop for Men on the west side of Lyndale Mall in Cedar Rapids for these very fine clothes. Thank you, Sean, with the nice pocket square Hawkeye colors appropriately enough, but also to my buddy Trey at Trim's Barbershop in downtown Marion. Trey and Sean have teamed together. If you like, subscribe, rate, review, follow me on Twitter. Also, email me any messages, Dave at DaveO'HaraSports.com or via Twitter at Dave O'Hara Sports and also via Instagram. I will be sure to draw each month a winner for a free haircut and beard trim or barber shave from Trey at Trims, but also giveaways from my friend Sean Holly at Holly Shop for Men. So thanks for tuning in. Look forward to talking to you again next week. And as always, go Hawks. That's all from me. Thanks to all of you.
There is a spot for women in agriculture. There's many places for females, for female farmers. We can do a lot. Over the years, maybe we couldn't have always done everything, but there's lots of places we're finding on our dairy farm especially that females are really good at milking cows. They're really good caretakers. They're good at taking care of animals and observant and detail-oriented, which fits in well on a farm and can make an operation more successful.